On January 10th, 49 BCE, Gaius Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River with his 13th legion. Centuries later, historian Suetonius would write that as he crossed the river, Caesar uttered the Latin phrase alia iacta est, meaning the die is cast, signifying a point of no return. The Roman Senate had issued an order to Caesar in 50 BCE, instructing him to disband his legions before reaching the Rubicon, the northern border of Italy. According to the Republic's imperium law, legion commanders were required to disband their armies before crossing the Rubicon. However, Caesar was aware that this was a political maneuver. His political rival, Pompey, was preparing to accuse him of disobedience and betrayal. Moreover, entering Rome without his military powers would make it easier for him to be prosecuted and possibly executed. Therefore, Caesar decided to defy the Senate's order, crossing the Rubicon with his army, inevitably dragging Rome into an era of endless and bloody civil wars. Military figures of the Republic began to assume political roles one after another. Caesar, opposing Pompey and conducting military campaigns spanning from Spain to Egypt, achieved notable successes. Ultimately, in the early months of 44 BCE, with the confidence of having defeated all his rivals, Caesar returned to Rome and declared himself Dictator Perpetuus, or Dictator in perpetuity. However, from that moment on, Rome became a more dangerous place for Caesar. Historian Titus Livius identified 3 separate events that paved the way for his demise. The first was the humiliation of senators during a ceremony at the Venus Genetrix Temple, an incident highlighted by Roman historians Cassius Dio and Suetonius as well. During the ceremony, new titles were planned to be bestowed upon Caesar for his achievements. However, Caesar not only failed to stand in honor of the senators present, but also expressed that he already had enough of the proposed titles, rejecting the gift offered by the Senate and belittling its members without adhering to proper etiquette gave the impression that Caesar no longer regarded the Senate with importance. Another event pointed out by Titus Livius occurred in January of 44 BCE. On that day, people's representatives Gaius Appidius Marullus and Lucius Flavius went on a walk around the forum. As they approached the rostra, the speaking area, they noticed a laurel-wreathed crown on a statue of Caesar's head. Given its symbolism of royalty and the god Jupiter, the representatives immediately ordered the removal of the crown from Caesar's head. Although the incident was not extensively pursued, events in the following days would lead to increased unrest and vocal discontent. Caesar had significantly increased his popularity among the people during both the Gallic Wars and the Civil War, becoming a beloved political figure. However, this love sometimes manifested in unwelcome excesses. On January 26th, as Caesar rode on horseback along the Appian Way, a small group that greeted him erupted in chants of Rex, meaning king. Upon this, the people's representatives Marullus and Flavius ordered their arrest, and a few days later, Caesar, in the Senate, ensured the dismissal of Marullus and Flavius from their duties, citing their opposition to him. This excessive attack on the people's representatives ultimately led to Caesar losing power in the Senate. The third event in the series of events that led to Caesar's downfall occurred on February 15, 44 BCE, during the Lupercalia festival. Consul Marcus Antonius, one of Caesar's most valuable commanders, placed a laurel-wreathed crown on Caesar's head and incited the onlookers by saying, "The Roman people give this to you." Suddenly, cheers and shouts erupted from the crowd. While many hailed Caesar as king, a few tried to comprehend the events with anxious looks. However, Caesar calmly set the crown aside, stating, the king of the Romans is only Jupiter. Nevertheless, this brief demonstration disturbed more than a few pairs of eyes watching them from the crowd. The fuse of the plot against Caesar was ignited on the evening of February 22nd during a secret meeting between Senator Cassius Longinus and Marcus Brutus. At the end of the meeting, the two decided to prevent Caesar from becoming the king of Rome at any cost. If necessary, they were prepared to personally kill him, but would never allow the Republic to be destroyed. Whispers of their plan quickly echoed in the corridors of Rome. Although it only required one person to kill another, Brutus believed that for the assassination of Caesar to be perceived as the legitimate removal of a tyrant, it needed to involve numerous individuals. These individuals should be prominent political or military figures in Rome. Thus, the assassination was built on a delicate balance. The primary objectives were to kill Caesar and gather enough men to fight against his supporters. However, those involved had to be carefully selected to avoid the exposure of the plot. Consequently, impulsive youths and ignorant elders were excluded from the conspiracy. On March 2nd, Quintus Labio responded positively to Brutus's invitation. Shortly thereafter, on March 7th, influenced by Labio, Decimus Brutus, Gaius Trebonius, Tullius Cimber, Minucius Bacillus, and brothers Gaius and Publius Cerilius Casca became part of the conspiracy. Some politicians who had supported Pompey during the Civil War and were aligned with Caesar also began to join the plot. In the end, approximately 60 to 80 figures who played important roles in Roman politics had gathered around Brutus and Longinus. The conspirators held their meetings with great secrecy, gathering in small groups at each other's homes to formulate a plan and discuss how to execute it. The inclusion of Cicero and Marcus Antonius in the conspiracy, both of whom held significant positions in Roman politics at the time, was a topic of considerable debate. However, Cicero was deemed overly cautious, and it was concluded that Marcus Antonius was too loyal to Caesar. Furthermore, to prevent potential opposition and to block the threat, there were discussions about the necessity of killing Marcus Antonius along with Caesar. Brutus vehemently opposed this idea, as the death of Marcus Antonius could politicize the event. Ultimately, as the assassination was not only a political act, but also carried poetic and aesthetic value due to ending the reign of a tyrant in Brutus's dreams, it was decided that Marcus Antonius would be spared. The conspirators then began to plan how to assassinate Caesar. They believed that where and how Caesar was killed would make a significant difference. An assassination in a hidden location would be less effective than one in the heart of Rome, in plain view of everyone. Some were in favor of killing Caesar while he walked on the Via Sacra, the sacred way. Conversely, the day of the consular elections was also proposed as a suitable option. However, the majority of senators preferred that Caesar be killed during one of the Senate meetings. The main reason for this was that only senators were allowed to enter the Senate building. Caesar's personal guards had to wait outside the building, making it easier to kill him. Moreover, some believed that killing a tyrant in front of the Senate would be perceived not as a political conspiracy, but as a noble act done for the sake of their country. Thus, all preparations for the plan were made. Caesar was planning to leave Rome for an eastern military campaign on March 18th. Therefore, the date for the assassination was set for March 15th. This date coincided with the last Senate meeting before Caesar's departure for the eastern campaign. When the day arrived, senators gathered at the Pompey Theater since the Senate building in the Forum was under renovation. However, Caesar was running late. According to Roman historians, On the night of March 15th, his wife, Calpurnia, had a dream and prevented her husband from attending the Senate meeting, fearing that he would be killed. According to various accounts, Calpurnia had dreamed of Caesar's death in different ways that night. The likely source of her inspiration was the words of the seer Spurina, who had warned Caesar that he would be in danger until the Ides of March. In addition to this alarming situation, Caesar, using his less than perfect health as an excuse, consulted the senators on the possibility of postponing the meeting. However, Decimus Brutus, a part of the conspiracy and a close friend of Caesar's, had encouraged him not to disappoint the senators who had already assembled for a long time. Suetonius, the historian, wrote that while on his way to the Senate, Caesar received a warning note from someone he encountered, indicating an assassination plot against him. However, like many other notes he received, Caesar placed this note among others he held in his left hand to read later. When Caesar entered the building and took his seat, he appeared quite cheerful. Despite it being March 15th and nothing adverse happening to him, he even mocked the kinsman Spurina at the door. "Well, the Ides of March have come," Caesar said to Spurina, to which the seer responded, "Yes, they have come, but they have not gone yet." After this brief exchange, when Caesar entered the building and sat down, the conspirators surrounded him as if to pay their respects. Lucius Tullius, in particular, advanced, pleading for the pardon of his exiled brother. However, Caesar, with a nod that meant denial, rejected his request despite the persistence. Nevertheless, Lucius continued to move forward, grasping Caesar's toga and pulling him toward himself. Confused by what was happening, Caesar exclaimed, "This is violence." Some things happened rapidly, and one of the Casca brothers, approaching from behind, delivered a dagger blow just below his throat. According to Plutarch, Caesar turned around and exclaimed, "Casca, you villain, what are you doing?" Casca, in fear, called out to his brother and triggered all the conspirators into action. Thus, surrounding Caesar, they stabbed him multiple times amidst the horrified gazes of hundreds. If Caesar attempted to escape, it was in vain, as a curtain of blood fell over his eyes, and he fell to the ground. However, the organizers of the conspiracy had no intention of stopping. Caesar, one of the greatest military geniuses in Roman history, was brought down with 23 dagger blows. He was still alive, watching his assassins with blood-covered eyes. Some historians even claim that, turning to Marcus Brutus, he said, "Even you, my son." However, his complete demise was imminent. After this, the conspirators left the dying Caesar in the Pompey Theater and ran into the streets, shouting, "Citizens of Rome, we are free once again." The city was gripped by fear and panic, which only began to subside after Marcus Antonius managed to convene the Senate 2 days later. By announcing that the conspirators would not be punished, Marcus Antonius initiated a period of reconciliation. However, the love of the people for Caesar could not be extinguished. After the funeral, a large crowd, holding torches, marched to the houses of Brutus and Cassius. On the way, they encountered Helvius Cinna and, mistaking him for the conspirator Cornelius Cinna, killed him, mounting his head on a spear and parading it through the city streets. Following this, they descended to the Forum and erected a Numidian marble monument, carving the inscription, "To the Father of the Fatherland," to honor Caesar. After his death, Caesar was deified with the approval of both the Senate and the people. During the games organized by his successor Augustus in his honor, the Roman Forum was adorned with statues of Caesar. A wall was built around the building or he was killed, and a decision was made not to convene the Senate on the date of March 15th again. After Caesar's death, Rome did not find peace, and this event ignited the fuse of the Second Civil War period, which would ultimately result in the victory of Augustus. Those who killed Caesar lived no more than 3 years, and some were forced to commit suicide with the same daggers they used to kill him. On February 14, 44 BCE, Caesar declared himself dictator for life. Wearing royal purple robes and seated on a large throne made of gold, he planned a major military campaign against the East. Many believed he would be a new Alexander, and his victories would surpass even those of Alexander the Great. However, history did not permit it. Exactly 1 month later, on March 15th, when Gaius Julius Caesar entered the Pompey Theater, he collapsed to the ground with 23 dagger blows unleashed by the merciless senators surrounding him. In a pool of blood, at the feet of the statue of his greatest enemy, Pompey, he breathed his last. His death provided some relief to the Republicans, but this relief would not be enough to save the Republic.